What's going on, Packer fans? Happy Packers game day. Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. Thanks so much for joining me today. Really excited about this Cardinals-Packers game. I think it's going to be highly entertaining. I think, all of the narratives this week of the COVID short week, Deandre Hopkins questionable, J.J. Watt out, Davante Adams likely out. There's been all this talk and stuff. I think once we get into this game, I think it's just going to be highly entertaining against two incredibly competitive teams. We're going to get to all of that in just a moment, but a ton to cover today. I want to go over news or lack thereof news from Wednesday. I also want to go over my defensive grades from this past week. This is my last chance to get to it because soon we'll be going over Cardinals grades. And then, of course, want to preview this game a little bit. So let's jump in right away. I think maybe the biggest news from Wednesday was the lack of news. No new COVID results or anything like that. The fact that yes, Davante Adams and Joe Barry and Allen Lazard have been, sort of at least up to this point, been taken out of this game. But this could have theoretically been a lot worse. Malik Taylor still could have been on that list. And more importantly, we could have had more positives up until that point. Now, we're not out of the clear yet. There is more testing to be done on Thursday. Everyone will be tested prior to the game, and there could be potentially more positives. And if that's the case, that's still something to be concerned about, pre-game and on Thursday. So not out of the woods yet, but a huge positive that on Wednesday, this did not continue to be an issue. And all of a sudden, 2 or 3 more players were placed on COVID IR, and it becomes a major issue. So that was, I think, really the biggest takeaway from Wednesday is no new news, which was very good news. No new news on Davante Adams, though, either, which is probably bad news. Now, the team's not going to announce whether he tested negative or positive on Wednesday, obviously for HIPAA reasons as well as for competitive advantage reasons. So we don't know if on his Wednesday test he tested negative or positive. We do know that he did not travel with the team, which means he did not test negative on Tuesday and Wednesday, which would have been the only way that he would have been able to fly with the team. If he tested negative on Wednesday, he would only need one more negative test on Thursday to then be able to likely charter a flight, whatever the case may be, to get to Arizona and play in that game. If he tested positive on Wednesday, that's likely it. He's not going to be able to play. Green Bay knows that probably at this point if there's any hope. Davante Adams knows that at this point if there's any hope. We do not. It is in all likelihood, going to be a game without Davante Adams. And Green Bay was even talking as such, basically in their press conferences on Wednesday. So I would not expect Davante Adams in this game, but again, I think the overarching takeaway is that there was no additional players placed on the COVID-19 IR list, and that is, I think, very, very good news, even if Green Bay does, in fact, have to play without Davante Adams, Allen Lazard, and, of course, coach without Joe Barry. That was not the only news in any way, shape, or form from Wednesday. The biggest news, probably of all, and certainly from an NFL standpoint, was the fact that we found out first J.J. Watt was not going to play in this game. It was later announced, or at least reported by Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter. I think Schefter had it first. Either way, that J.J. Watt is likely going to miss the entirety of this season. It's a 3-month procedure. Maybe he could be back by the Super Bowl, but he's going to be out for the entirety of the year in all likelihood, which is a huge blow to the Cardinals for this game, but a much bigger blow to the Cardinals for the season. Watt had been fantastic up until this point, both against the run and against the pass. Arguably one of the best defensive tackles in all of football, probably not named Aaron Donald. This is a major loss for the Cardinals. And I talk about it all the time. There's this constant battle going on of, yes, you have your win-loss record, but what's it cost you along the way? And in this case, yeah, it's great that the Cardinals are undefeated, but losing a key member of their team in J.J. Watt is just so ridiculously hard to recover from. Absolutely terrible. And, for J.J. Watt, terrible for the Cardinals. And, I think one of the real disappointments of this week, and this happens sometimes with Thursday Night Football, obviously it's not just that, but that we should have been treated to arguably one of the great games of the year. Cardinals, Packers, if both of these teams are at full strength, it's just a heavyweight fight. The fact that there is no Davante Adams, no J.J. Watt in this game amongst potentially others, that's disappointing. You want to see both of these teams at full strength going head-to-head on Thursday Night Football in this epic clash of titans. Instead, you're left without being able to see two of the real greats in the NFL in Adams and Watt in all likelihood. So that's disappointing, but it is of course major news for the Cardinals, and that has implications going much further past this game, because let's be real, this Cardinals team is a legitimate contender this season. I don't think their record is a fluke in any way, shape, or form. And the way that Watt and Chandler Jones were playing along that line, Budda Baker on the back end, Kyler Murray, Deandre Hopkins, this is a fantastic football team. I think this is a team that's legitimately, again, a Super Bowl contender. Without J.J. Watt, that takes a massive hit, and I don't think that's overstating it. So huge news for the Cardinals. As far as what we're looking for on Thursday, as far as news and notes go, again, is there any additional positive COVIDs that result in any other players not playing? We're looking to see if MVS is activated from IR and is able to play in this game. And then beyond that, all right, if he is active, is this, we're going to put him in the game 10 times as hopefully a decoy on a deep, we're going to use him as a decoy deep to maybe open things up underneath if teams have to be a little bit more aware of him deep, or is he literally, 60, 65 snaps at basically full health, which changes the game entirely if that's the case. And of course, if he's not in there at all, if he's not active, that's going to hurt Green Bay's chances as well. I think the next thing to look at is the inactives, right? Kevin King, Preston Smith, are they both active? That would certainly give a boost to the defense if both of those players were able to play and help contain Kyler Murray, help have some additional coverage down the field on the plethora of wide receivers that Arizona has. So I think that's going to be the next thing. Deandre Hopkins, also going to be a game time decision. Cliff Kingsbury seemed pretty confident that he was going to play on Thursday. I would expect him to play, but anytime you get into those game time decision situations, you could go out on the field, something could, kind of cramp up, whatever, and all of a sudden you're inactive before you know it. Again, I think we want to see these star players play. Let's hope that Hopkins and Adams somehow are both able to go on Thursday to make it that much more important of a matchup. But those are, I think, the inactives that you're going to want to keep an eye on. Again, Hopkins, Preston Smith, Kevin King, and his MVS activated. I would expect Juwan Winfrey to be called up from the practice squad. Anyone else called up? Ben Braden could be again, with Dennis Kelly potentially or likely out in this game. So all things to keep an eye on as Thursday goes along. Now, before we get to previewing this game, I do want to quickly go through my best and worst graded defenders from this past week. I'm not going to spend too much time into it. If you want to check out the full grades, go to PackerReport.com. Grades will be up there, and you can see the entire list, offense, defense, and you can see it for not only this week, but the entirety of the year so far. So make sure to check that out if you have not already. Top 3 this week. Rashawn Gary, number 1. I don't think any surprise there. I know people have been clamoring, it's great that he's getting pressures, but he needs the stats. Well, he had the stats this week, the forced fumbles, the sacks, the pressures, the hits. He had the whole 9 yards, and it was a very impressive game from Rashawn Gary. Interestingly enough, I actually had last week's game against Chicago for Rashawn Gary ahead of this week. If you look at that game, he was just more consistent overall, didn't make the impact plays, but had the consistency throughout the entirety of the game. This game, he actually started a little bit slow, had a couple lulls here and there, got shut down on a few plays, but made the huge impact plays. So, pick your poison. Both are really good versions of Rashawn Gary, either A, just consistent, relentless pressure throughout the course of the game, or less pressure but more impact plays. Both of them great. Rashawn Gary's been nothing short of fantastic these last 4 weeks. He continues to put together a very impressive season and certainly seems like he is taking a major leap in this third year. My second highest graded player, Rasul Douglas, not only sticky in coverage, had a forced fumble that had Taylor Heineke, of all people, not been running up the field. Green Bay would have been able to recover that. And either way, it was an awesome play by Douglas. And again, had sticky coverage throughout the course of the game. And then number 3 might surprise you, because Eric Stokes gave up that huge touchdown to begin the game. From that point forward, he was fantastic. I mean, there's just really great man-to-man coverage in this game that you're not going to see because the ball didn't go his way. Receivers making cuts and him cutting right with them. If the ball had been thrown his way, he would have had opportunities to pick some of those passes off. I was really impressed with how he responded. Of course, had the big stop on 4th down with the pass breakup. He was fantastic the remainder of the game. And I love the fact, yes, gave up a big play, would have loved to play the better, got beat off the line clean, then didn't get turned around even though he had the speed to catch up to things. Sort of the opposite of that Jamar Chase play from a couple weeks ago against Cincinnati. But there's so many positives from Eric Stokes in this game. Very, very excited about the way that he's playing football right now. As he starts, there's a couple plays here and there's a play early in this game where he jumps the route or has an opportunity to jump through and just doesn't trust it yet. And if he trusts that, he might house a pick six. And those things are going to come with time. The speed is there. The agility is there. He's played far more on balance than he did in college. Very excited about the way that Eric Stokes played in this game, especially following a mistake and an error. And the fact that he didn't let that bother him and continued to play at a high level after that, I think is even a bigger testament to Stokes in this game. My bottom three players in this game, Jonathan Garvin, Henry Black, and Tyler Lancaster. Garvin had a couple plays where he just was completely lacking effort, which I don't think that that's normally the case with him, but it was very odd. There were just plays where he was almost just jogging through the play, which you rarely see from Packer players. It just doesn't happen very often. There were a few of those from Garvin in this game, which was a bit disappointing. He had a couple really nice plays in this game too, but the bad unfortunately outweighed the good. Henry Black was awful in his time in the game. Had he played more snaps, he probably would have been the lowest graded defender. I guarantee you he was the highest or lowest graded defender on a per play basis. He came in, he missed multiple tackles, allowed multiple catches, and it looked like he got benched for Shamarjon Charles late in that game, and they basically took him off the field. He was really bad in his time on the field. And then Tyler Lancaster just struggled to really make any impact. Had a couple plays where he was stout at the point of attack, but couldn't really get off blocks, couldn't contain the quarterback. Just a rough game from Lancaster. You would have liked to see him just hang in against the run a bit better because that's what he needs to do. But just wasn't a great game for him. Shout out to Kingsley Keke, who, again, I've been hard on for the majority of this year. I thought he had a really nice game, including a couple big impact plays towards the end of that game. All right, let's quickly get to Packers Cardinals. I'm not going to do 15 things to watch for this week. I think we've covered enough. And ultimately, like I said, I think this is going to be a highly entertaining game. Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers. I think it starts, of course, and this is Captain Obvious, I get it, but with containing Kyler Murray. We just saw, Taylor Heineke have almost 100 yards rushing. I've mentioned this throughout the course of the week so far, but a lot of times you see these mobile quarterbacks struggle more in the playoffs when teams have a full week and a ton of investment into putting a game plan together to specifically contain players in the past, like Michael Vick, of course, a Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and so on and so forth. When they're honed in on those sort of players and everyone's on the same page and everyone has a little bit more built up intensity, it can be a totally different game for these mobile quarterbacks. Now, all due respect to Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray, they've been phenomenal throwing the ball through the air. And it's not like Kyler Murray has a ton of rushing yards on the season. He's doing his damage through the air. So this is not a disrespect to them through the air in any way, shape, or form. But you have to start by containing him and making sure that you're collapsing a pocket around him. Because if you allow a gap at all, he's either going to get out and keep his eyes downfield and make big plays with his arm, or he's going to make you miss in the open field. And especially, he's been very picky and choosy in opportunities to do those. And a lot of big third downs, he has the opportunity to get in the open field, make people miss, and pick up major yardage and move the chains on plays where a lot of times 3rd and 13, might be a super advantageous play for the defense. But if you're not all aligned on the defensive front, making sure that you're staying in your lane, staying in your alleys, and not allowing those exit points, he can get out and hurt you in a variety of different ways. So you want to keep him in the pocket and then collapse it around him. Just how much Preston Smith and Whitney Merciless and those guys can play in this game is going to be important. Rashawn Gary needs to, be a major focal point for him to be the guy that's collapsing the pocket rather than trying to be that speed rusher to get around the edge. Because if he speed rushes and the tackle just pushes him outside the pocket, that's going to open up a major throwing or, major running lane for Murray to either step up and again, buy time to throw downfield or just to run with the ball. When Gary is pressuring the pocket, he's at his best anyway. If Clark and Preston and Gary can have a concerted effort to collapse rather than to try to get around somebody or things like that, it's going to be a much better opportunity for this Packers defense. But how much time did they have the ability to scheme and coach these guys up with no practices this week, trying to put in a new game plan? It gets very challenging. And by the way, Joe Barry's out with COVID as well. So not great. I think the other thing is, how do you handle an unfamiliar opponent? This is a unique offense with Cliff Kingsbury, and there's obviously other teams are taking pieces of that offense and using it within theirs, but it is a very unique, sort of run and gun style offense, and it's not something that you see on a week-to-week basis. So Add on the fact that you're focused on Kyler Murray. Now you've got a unique offense. They're doing a lot of, quad, wide receivers to one side. They have a ton of speed. It's just a lot to take in a given week for a defense. And again, missing a coordinator, missing Alexander, missing Zadarius Smith, and so on and so forth. It just makes it very, very challenging. Green Bay's defense is going to have to step up huge in this one. Offensively, of course, you don't have Devontae Adams either, so this has got to be an Aaron Jones-centric game, right? This has got to be something, you go back to Kansas City a couple of years ago on the road. I know Mahomes wasn't in that game, but you needed somebody to step up in the absence of Devontae Adams in that game. Aaron Jones did. They used him in a variety of different ways, had over 100 yards through the air, came up huge. They got to figure out a way to involve Aaron Jones in all aspects of the game. This isn't a Devontae Adams game. This is an Aaron Jones game. They got to revolve everything around him and making him successful and giving him opportunities to succeed. I'm going to be intrigued to see how they do that, but I also think Green Bay has the opportunity to stay a bit more balanced on offense, not looking to one area of the field. That's not a diss at Rodgers or Adams. I think just you could see Cobb and EQ and potentially, MVS and Tunyon and Jones maybe getting a little bit more of a rhythm because they're the ones that are primarily on the field. And I think everyone's going to be a bit more involved and engaged because maybe the ball's not going to Adams 15, 20 times. So we'll see. I think there is an opportunity to be a bit more balanced there, which we've seen in those games in the past when Devontae Adams has been out. Do I think it's ideal? No, but I think there's opportunities to use it still to your advantage, and I think Matt LaFleur is very smart enough and wise enough to do that, and we're going to see just how successful they are in doing so against a very good Arizona Cardinals defense, even without J.J. Watt. And then I think that answer, asks or at least brings up the next biggest question in this game is how does Arizona handle the loss of J.J. Watt? That is a psychological blow, right? Not only for this game, but you're going into this game undefeated at home, ready to take on a very challenging opponent in Green Bay. And then the night before your big game, you learn that the leader on your defense, the guy that you spent a ton of money on for this season, the guy that you're tag teaming with Chandler Jones up front to create one of the, most impressive pass rush duos in football, is now going to not only miss this game, but be out for the year. That is a very big psychological blow for the Cardinals. How do they handle that? Not only, again, just psychologically, but now you're missing your key guy up front on defense. That changes everything for Arizona up front. So they're going to have to deal with that both emotionally and then, physically out on the field, not having that type of player out on the field. How they handle that will be a big part of this game as well. I'm going Cardinals in this one. Again, I hope tomorrow as you listen to this and the Packers have won that you can all comment and say, Andy, you idiot, the Packers won and you predicted the Cardinals to win. Again, I don't put a ton of stock in predictions. If I knew, I would just be betting a ton in Vegas instead of doing this, I guess. I have no idea, but my gut says Arizona in a close, entertaining game. I think just the road game Thursday night, Cliff Kingsbury's offense, Kyler Murray at quarterback, no Devontae Adams, no David Bakhtiari, no Jair Alexander, no Zadarius Smith, and so on and so forth. Joe Barry out. I think Green Bay's behind the eight ball in this one. I'm super excited for this game. This honestly one of the more excited games I've been for in a long time. I just think it's going to be really fun. I really think it's going to be a lot of fun. So enjoy it. It's okay, regardless of what happens. This is a game where you're not exactly playing with a full deck. Enjoy it. See if they can steal a win in Arizona, which would be massive for playoff seeding and everything else. Either way, Green Bay is going to be just fine, and I look forward to seeing how they play in this game, how they respond after this game, win or lose. They're going to get a mini bye, which is much needed, and then they head to Kansas City for what should be another highly entertaining game. That does it for me. Enjoy your Packers game day. Go Pack Go, especially today. I will see you tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining me.